Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is your man, Big B, Brien Hanley, and welcome to the Big 12 Insiders. Appreciate everybody being in here. You know, I've talked to you guys. I get in the comments section, and a lot of you have asked for us to get going on hoops. It's time. So today we're going to talk a little Big 12 basketball in general. I don't know that it's necessarily time to start talking hoops yet. We'll get into that. Does anybody care? How good is the Big 12 this year? You know, out of conference record is impressive, but when you take it the Big 12 SEC, challenge, it wasn't as impressive. So we'll break that down a little bit. And does it all just come down to March? Is that really just the only thing that is important when it comes to basketball? Is what you do in March Madness, is that all that anybody really cares about? So we're going to break all that down for you today. Before we do, again, as always, remember to like, follow, subscribe, continue to hit that notification bell, dive into those comments like you guys always do. So we really do appreciate you. So first things first, Big 12. Does anybody care? Number one, that it's basketball season yet. Like, the college football playoff is still going on. It's going to be going on for a couple of more weeks. We are in conference season in basketball. Does anybody care yet? And here's the thing about that. Clearly, obviously, there's people that care. But the longer that the football season goes on and the basketball season is almost halfway over, it's like, no, it keeps getting pushed further and further and further back. To me, that's a bad thing for the Big 12, because we've talked several times about the Big 12. Part of the sticking point in them getting a new contract, a TV contract, is how strong the basketball is, and them to be able to put the basketball on a network or different network and to be able to promote it that way. Well, if you're basically reducing the season down to a month, maybe a month and a half, how is that going to help? I mean, are networks really going to want to give millions and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars for something that they're going to have a month and a half of? Because the national championship of college football is in the middle of January. Okay. Then you got basketball that was going to come after that. Well, March Madness is right around the corner. That starts in the middle of March. So let's call it 2 months, if that's what you want to give it. I'm not sure that's conducive for the Big 12 to succeed. I understand it is what it is. We can't necessarily change it right now. I mean, you can change timetables if you want to, but that's a different conversation for a different day. Me and Fitz have talked about that a couple of times, is that you move up the football schedule, you move back the basketball schedule, all that good stuff. We could do that, but doesn't sound like that's coming anytime soon, if ever. But yeah, does anybody really care right now? I mean, people are going to the games and people watch, but nobody's really put a whole lot of stock into basketball yet. Now, one of the things people challenge me and challenge other channels, why don't you talk about basketball? Well, the simple fact is nobody really cares. That's why, and we'll see today, if you guys are engaged, but, it's football still going on, and football is king in America, period, end of story. And the same thing with the NBA. Now, I'll argue that the NBA's product is just absolute garbage. I mean, nobody wants to walk around and see a team shooting 100 threes a game, no inside presence, no effort, no defense, yada, yada, yada. I'm just not into the NBA. I know they're the best players in the world. I'm not denying that, but I just don't like how it's played. No strategy, all one-on-one. I just can't take it. Call me old school if you want. I just can't take it. But I also like the pageantry of college a lot better. I mean, don't get me wrong. Going to an NBA game is cool. The environment is cool. But going to a college basketball game, to me, is better. It's just better. But yeah, that's the reason. I just don't think people are engaged, because football is still running strong. Like, You can say it's winding down. It's the end of the season, but it's the crescendo of the entire season. So nobody's into it yet. Now, how good is the Big 12? Well, that's a different question. Before the season started, I, like a lot of people, thought, Big 12 getting 10 teams in, maybe 12, 13. That ain't going to be the case. They're definitely not getting 12 to 13. I don't think they would even get 10 at this point in time. Now, I will say this, because things obviously are going to change once we get through the conference. But right now, the Big 12, out of the top 52, and I threw 52 in there because Arizona State's 52, they have 10 teams in the top 52 of the net, which is pretty good. That's pretty good for as far as the conference is concerned. The SEC has more. Unfortunately, the SEC right now is projecting to be the best conference in the country, which literally makes me want to vomit. But facts are facts. You know, I'm going to tell you the truth, no matter what they are, what it is. SEC has the best conference in basketball right now. Right now. Big 12 also went 8-10 versus the SEC, this year in matchups. Again, not great. But, there can be a silver lining. I think the conference is going to be ultra competitive again. Now, you can say it cannibalizes itself. It's different in basketball than in football. In basketball, they don't punish you like they do in football. Like in football, they punish the Big 12. Oh, it's not any good. They cannibalize itself. There's not any good teams in it. Everybody beats everybody. Or that's what they say about football. Excuse me. It's not any good. In basketball, the exact opposite. In basketball, they give you the grace. They give you the leeway. Yeah, I know that they lost, 8 games within the conference, but do you realize how good that conference is? And yeah, they cannibalized themselves. The leader or the winner of the conference had 6 conference losses, but that conference is just incredible. That's the same grade. They just get, and it's not just Big 12. That's all basketball conferences in general. They give you the grace. They give you the grace. It's not like, and I know the argument will be, well, in the SEC, we say that about our conference and everybody's good, and all you do is complain about it because we say that our conference is the best. No, it's not the same, because in basketball, everybody's given that grace. Everybody's is given, you know what, your conference is good. Yeah, you can lose 5 games in that conference. We understand. Everybody is afforded that. In football, only the SEC is afforded that. That's where the difference is. The SEC is a great conference, so they can lose several games in that conference, and you still considered a very, very good football team. In basketball, or in other conferences, can't do that. In basketball, everybody, ACC, Big 10, Big 12, Big East, all these other conferences, they get that same grace. That's where the difference comes in, is that you're afforded to cannibalize yourself when you know that your conference, hey, it's conference play. It's tough. It's different in football. You can't compare the two, but when you're comparing the scenarios, you absolutely can. You absolutely can. But that's where the Big 12, I think, has got to make some headway. I believe the Big 12 is going to end up being the best conference. But how do they get there? And look, not a lot of you are going to like this answer, but it's the truth. You got to win in March. You got to win in March. For instance, the Big 12 right now in football is looked upon a little bit better at the end of the season nationwide than what they were before the college football playoff. Why? Because Arizona State went in and wrecked shop and almost won a football game. In my opinion, probably should have, but they didn't. So they probably should have is a strong word. They didn't win the game, period, end of story. But they played well, and they showed the country, hey, man, we can play. We're just as good as everybody else in this country. We're just as good as they are. And that's why the Big 12 as of now is, well, you know what? Maybe it wasn't as bad as what we thought. Same thing has to happen in basketball. Last year, Universally, everybody, Big 12, best conference in basketball. Got a ton of teams in the tournament. And nobody made it to the Final Four. And look, in winning in basketball in the Final Four and March Madness in general, you've got to have great guard play. I think you got to be old. You know, you can't be one and done. Look at Kentucky. You can't just be old or young and win. Look what Calipari was trying to do. That just did not work. College basketball has changed, especially with the transfer portal. You got to have good guard play. You got to be old. You know, you got to have a ton of luck to be able to get there as well. It's a one and done tournament. You've got to have luck. That includes injury bug, officiating, everything. The ball's got to bounce your way, 50-50 balls. You got to have some luck. Now, you could say last year UConn was just better than everybody, and they were. They were, but they had those things. You know, they had those things. And another thing, coaching matters. You know, coaching 100% matters. So you got to have all that to be able to win in March Madness. And the Big 12 is going to have to afford itself and going to have to get there. I'm sorry. I'm not saying we have to win a national championship. I'm not saying that. But you got to get some teams in the Final Four. You can't continuously have the best team or the best conference and you can't win 4 games to get to the Final Four. I understand you have to have all those factors. In Houston, last year, guy gets hurt. What are you going to do? Your best player gets hurt, can't go. It is what it is. I totally understand. But that's part of it. Unfortunately, that's part of it. And, you know, it stinks. But it's just reality. Basketball, we've got to be able to get to the Final Four on a regular basis. And also, it can't just be one team. For instance, Kansas has the best college brand or college basketball brand, if not the country, but definitely in the Big 12. It can't just be Kansas going to the Final Four every year. That can't be the case. Because if it's just them, then how good is the conference really if they constantly win the conference and are the only team that can ever get to the Final Four? Then how good is your conference? So it's collectively, we got to do damage in the tournament. And we've seen it before. We've seen other conferences do it before. You know, Sweet 16, they got 5 teams in it. We've seen that. That needs to be the Big 12 this year. Sweet 16, let's get 5 teams in that thing. And then get 1 into the Final Four. Again, I'm not saying we got to win a national title, but we need to start showing up, and that would get us more respect. Because here's the thing. Any knowledgeable basketball fan is going to tell you that the Big 12 is better than the Big 10 in basketball. Now, you can have a debate, whatever you want, but from top to bottom, the Big 12, and not just this year, it has been better than the Big 10. But nationally, is that the case? Or is that the perception nationally? No, it isn't. People will still say that the Big 10 is better than the Big 12 in basketball. Now, you and I know that it's not. You know, we watch the games. We don't just deal with, oh, well, you know, the Big 10 and yada, 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 yada. We don't deal with that. We watch the games. We know who's better. But the perception is that the Big 10 is better. Well, the only way to be able to flip that, got to start doing damage in March. And it can't just be one team. And I understand that Baylor won a national championship a few years back. I get that. But that was during COVID. I'm not trying to take it away from them because they still won. I don't care. I mean, the team still participated. But it was still during COVID. And the same hoopla wasn't given to that as other tournament champions, if that makes sense. The same type of hoopla, it just wasn't there. It's not their fault. And they were the best team. I'm not saying they weren't even the best team. But you could also say the year that COVID in 2020, that Kansas had the best team. And they weren't afforded to be able to go win the national title. So it's crazy on what's going on. But that's kind of what my feeling is right now with basketball, is that do we care right now, speaking today, January 7th, do we care about college basketball yet? And if not, when? Is it, okay, football's over, now we're going to turn to it? Or because, heck, How many conference games are going to be played by that time? You know what I'm saying? You're going to look up and your team has played 19 games. And you're going to be like, man, what happened? Well, yeah, the season started a long time ago. Conference play is here. You're in the thick of conference season. That's what I'm talking about. Do we care? And when should we care? Because I'll be honest with you, I haven't talked about basketball because I haven't really been into it. I mean, I understand it's going on, and I always like watching the tournaments around Thanksgiving. I love those not conference tournaments, but those holiday tournaments. I love them. It's part of my pastime during the holiday season to watch those tournaments go on. But once that was over, I didn't pay attention to college basketball. I knew the games were on. I turned it on occasionally, but it was football. That was my focus. That was your focus. But here we are, and there's literally only 3 football games left. 3. And we're in the middle of conference season, or conference season is at the very beginning, and nobody is really that invested in it. So my question is, when should you be invested? Is it now? Is it 2 weeks from now? Or do you not even care until March? Which I think that's a disservice. And I would say most basketball fans are tuning in way before March. But it is a question. And to me, I think the Big 12, like I said, I think the Big 12's got to go out of its way to promote basketball earlier than what it does. I think it's got to go out of its way. Because, again, we've talked about it before. And I know Brett Yormark has kind of shot it down as far as getting our own thing for basketball. But it doesn't have to be its own thing, especially if we're talking about moving to TNT, and we already have games moving, college football games moving there. If we can get another big package for basketball too, an even bigger one, you might as well do that. Well, you got to start promoting it earlier. You can't we'll start promoting it at the middle of January and thinking that a network's going to be jumping up and down for that. That's not the case. So just my thoughts. Get in the comments section. Let me know what you guys think. I appreciate you. Again, it's a weird time. It's a weird time for college basketball right now. It's kind of that, it's like that in-between period, almost the dead period per se. But I think we got to jump in, and because Big 12 has got some really good basketball going on right now. Got to start paying attention earlier. Appreciate you guys. Love you. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for watching the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. This has been a Spirit Street production.